Welcome to The Explainer. I'm so thrilled you're joining us today because we are going to unpack the ultimate scientific guide to hacking your very own daily drive. If you've ever felt like your battery is running on literally 1%, but you've still got a mountain of work to get through, you are in exactly the right place. We're going to look closely at some absolutely fascinating psychiatric research that takes everything you thought you knew about getting things done and flips it completely upside down. So let's break down the actual neuroscience of motivation. Let's be real for a second here. Are you currently staring at a massive to-do list, just kind of waiting for the mood to strike? You know the exact feeling I'm talking about. You sit down at your desk, you look at all the stuff you have to accomplish, and you just feel nothing. A complete flat line of energy. So you tell yourself, okay, I'll just browse the internet for 5 minutes until I feel inspired. Or I'll wait until after I grab a coffee. Then the motivation's going to kick in. We have all been there. It is incredibly frustrating because we feel like we're at the mercy of some invisible, elusive force that just stubbornly refuses to show up when we need it most.
Well, get ready because a core psychiatrist's perspective reveals an incredibly liberating truth. Motivation is not something that naturally wells up while you wait. This is such a critical insight for us. Science is essentially telling us that waiting around for inspiration is a trap. We've been completely conditioned by movies, media, and maybe even our own wishful thinking to believe that motivation is this magical weather system that just rolls in and strikes us like a bolt of lightning. But from a strict neurological standpoint, sitting back and waiting for the motivation to magically appear before you start working is scientifically backward. It just doesn't happen organically out of thin air.
Okay, let's dive into this because this comparison is the absolute crux of our entire explainer. The prevailing belief out there is the motivation myth. This idea that motivation creates action and that feeling driven is a prerequisite for actually doing the work. But the neuroscience reality proves the exact opposite. Action creates motivation. I really want that to sink in for a second. You do not need to be motivated to take action. You need to take action to become motivated. It's the physical engagement, the literal doing of a task, that generates the mental energy you were waiting for in the first place. To really understand why this happens, we've got to look under the hood at your brain's anatomy, specifically a little something called the reward system. This is the neural mechanism that is stimulated by taking action, which in turn pulls out our motivation. Think of your brain's reward system as a massive, super powerful engine sitting inside a dormant machine. It possesses all the horsepower you could ever need to conquer your day, but it has a very specific, slightly ironic design flaw. It requires an external physical push from you to turn the ignition key. It literally cannot start itself. When you take physical action, you send a sensory signal to this system that wakes it right up.
And what exactly is happening when that engine wakes up? It starts pumping out the secret messenger hiding inside your nervous system, dopamine. Now, dopamine is so often misunderstood as just a pleasure chemical, you know? But in the context of our source material, it's really the chemical of drive, focus, and pursuit. When your reward system is stimulated by that initial action you took, it releases dopamine, which essentially acts as the high-octane fuel that makes you want to keep going. It's the biological equivalent of momentum.
And this brilliantly illustrates the exact step-by-step biological loop that happens in your head. Step 1, you take a small action. You just start, totally regardless of how you feel. Step 2, by taking that action, you gain a minor success. Maybe you wrote just a single sentence or washed one single dish. Step 3, your brain recognizes that minor success, and boom, dopamine is released. Step 4, because of that dopamine hit, your motivation surges. Suddenly, you've got the energy to write the second sentence or finish the rest of the dishes. The physical action birthed the chemical reaction, which then birthed the motivation. It is a beautiful, self-sustaining loop once you actually get it spinning. So, you're probably wondering, how do we actually trigger this cycle when we're feeling completely exhausted or paralyzed by a huge project, right? Knowing the neuroscience is awesome, but how do we force ourselves to take that critical step 1? Let's look at how this builds into a really practical, everyday strategy that you can start using literally the second this explainer is over. The answer is simple, but it does require you to drop your ego a bit. You need to lower the hurdle with small steps. Stop trying to conquer the entire mountain on day 1. When you look at a massive task, your brain gets totally overwhelmed. The hurdle is just way too high and you freeze. To hack your reward system, you have to make the initial action so incredibly small, so laughably easy that you literally cannot fail. You aren't cleaning the house, you are putting exactly one pair of socks in the laundry. You aren't writing a massive report, you are opening a blank document and typing the title. Just one. It literally only takes one tiny, almost ridiculously easy success experience to kickstart your brain's entire reward system.
By lowering the hurdle to just one single microtask, you absolutely guarantee a success. That one success guarantees a tiny release of dopamine, and that one tiny release of dopamine gives you the motivation to take step number 2. You're essentially tricking your brain into getting to work by lowering the barrier to entry until it is flat on the ground.
But listen, I hear you. Our source material totally accounts for this. What if you still feel completely stuck? What if your mental block is so severe that even taking one small step, even just opening the laptop or putting away one pair of socks, feels like lifting a physical boulder? Sometimes that internal resistance is just too high to overcome by yourself. And you know what? That is a completely normal human experience.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that science provides an incredibly powerful backup engine for exactly this scenario: harnessing group power. When our internal drive is completely zeroed out, we can actually borrow momentum from the outside world. We are fundamentally social creatures, and our neurology is deeply wired to respond to social dynamics. By bringing other people into the equation, we completely change the stakes and provide a very different kind of jolt to our nervous system.
Here is exactly how you activate that group power. First, utilize the strength of a group. Surround yourself with people who are already taking action, because behavioral momentum is super contagious. Second, make promises to those around you. Tell a colleague you're going to send them a draft by 2 p.m. Tell your partner you'll cook dinner tonight. By vocalizing the commitment, you're using external accountability to essentially force that first action. The fear of letting someone else down, or just the desire to keep your word, acts as this external cattle prod that gets you to take that critical first small step, which then, of course, triggers the dopamine cycle we just talked about.
As we move into the final phase of this explainer, I want to take a step back and look at the bigger picture for a second. We've talked a lot about dopamine, small steps, and accountability. But what is this all really for? Let's take a look at the ultimate payoff of applying this neuroscience to your daily life, because I promise you, it goes way, way beyond just ticking boxes on a to-do list.
So, the crucial point is that this framework extends far beyond simple productivity. According to the psychiatric research we're exploring today, mastering this action-first cycle actually drives total behavioral change. It thoroughly adjusts your daily habits because you're no longer playing the victim to your fluctuating moods. But most importantly, it is the shortest path to restoring mental health. When you're stuck in chronic inaction, it breeds anxiety, guilt, and depression. By using small steps in group power to generate action, you aren't just getting chores done. You're actively rebuilding a healthy, functioning reward system in your brain. You're reclaiming your agency and fostering deep, lasting psychological well-being.
Which leaves us with one final, very provocative question for you. Think about that one thing you've been putting off. Don't think about the whole project. Based on the neuroscience we've just uncovered together, what is the smallest possible step you can take right now? And I mean the absolute second this explainer ends. Can you write one word? Can you send one quick text? Can you just stand up and put your running shoes on? Do not wait for the motivation to arrive. Go take that tiny action, secure that quick win, release that dopamine, and just watch what happens to your drive. Go take your step, and I'll catch you next time.